Welcome, everyone. My name is James Salomons, and I'm a zero balancing practitioner based in Edinburgh, Scotland. In today's video, we're going to meet Gethyn Williams, an acupuncturist and zero balancer based in Wales. Now, Gethyn recently published his first book, and here's a copy. It's called Penetrating Heaven, and this book and its contents are the main topics of today's video. This book is about his explorations in inducing expanded states of consciousness by making use of acupuncture points during a zero balancing session. Now that's with his hands and not with needles. And although I haven't experienced this work firsthand, my sense is that it has huge potential. Expanded states of consciousness are a really juicy topic in zero balancing and one of my personal favorites. And I really like what Gethyn is bringing to the table here. So if you're a zero balancer, I think you'll enjoy this video and the potential that Gethyn's work brings into the zero balancing world. Links to Gethyn's book and his website are in the description below. And now, without any further ado, let's dive in. So, welcome, Gethyn, and thank you very much for agreeing to, to chat to me.
Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm not sure it's been called a show yet. Cool. Well, yeah, we met at Gaunt's for the first time this year, and I kind of felt like I knew you a little bit already because I'd read your book, Penetrating Heaven. Quite an achievement. I mean, writing a book is no small thing, and certainly the feeling I get from reading the book is that you were quite rigorous, and I think you started it quite a while ago. Can you kind of give us a sense of the timescales involved?
Well, I started it. It all started when I certified, a couple of weeks after I certified, actually. So it's the story of my post-certification years. So I certified in 2013.
Okay.
And a couple of weeks later, I did a workshop with Richard Walters in Devon. And I worked with him on the second day of the work. It was a weekend workshop, and I worked with him, and he he said, see what happens, lie down, see what happens. And he gave me a half moon at the neck, and I went into an altered state, and I had a vision, a journey experience. And so that's pretty much the start of the book. That's where it starts, because it stayed with me. The altered state experience really stayed with me, and it's still with me now, when I think about it. It's and so it became quite consuming, and yeah, it was right at the forefront of my mind then. And I wanted to know more about altered states, and I wanted to know what Richard had done and how I can do that. And yeah, and I started experimenting, and I used my knowledge of acupuncture and acupuncture points to see if any of them could be blended into the zero balancing protocol to elicit such experiences. And as Fritz had encouraged me to experiment with I'd had a conversation with him the year before at Gaunt's. Yeah, he'd encouraged me to explore some of my ideas, which I shared with him. And yeah, so I did, and I enlisted some volunteers, my friend Mike, and we did some experimental sessions. And yeah, I started writing down my method, started writing down the findings, the feedback, and I kept a journal.
Yeah.
That was the start of the book, but I didn't intend to write a book at the time.
So, going back to that experience that you had at the workshop, you said it stayed with you. I guess that you hadn't had such an experience before, or at least not one that stayed with you in this way.
It was very clear. It was, I'd had altered state experiences, but they were kind of dreamy and This one had such a clarity
Mm.
to it, and it was profound. It was on a different level to anything I'd had before, certainly. And it felt important.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't just some altered state experiences are just, oh, that was nice, you know, that was fun. But this one felt important, and it stayed with me. And yeah, I couldn't leave it. I couldn't just leave it like that. I had to know more. And as I explained in the book, I sort of applied it to my career path and where I was going, and you know, so it had meaning as well. Yeah, I mean, it was a visual experience, so
Mm.
it was a vision, but it was like a dream, a waking dream, a lucid dream,
Yeah.
but one I could engage with. And yeah, it seemed to have a life of its own, but I was, you know, I was there. I described going down or going up a path and then deciding I don't like that. And, you know, I was making decisions in the experience, but yeah.
Like being the character in like a computer game sort of thing, but just more real or vivid or
Yeah, in my imagination or my psyche, whatever in my consciousness, yeah, whatever the word is. It was difficult to come up with the language to use in the book, you know. um but yeah, it was a visual experience,
yeah.
um, like a waking dream, but it stayed with me, and I can shut my eyes and go back there. You know, I can see it all now.
Wow.
It's still there, and
And
yeah,
can you still engage with it now? As
I
in make
have.
decisions like you had done?
Yeah, I have. I've meditated um, on it, and sort of revisited it in my imagination, not
Mm.
within a ZB session, but just, you know, sitting meditating. And you know, I described in the book there were two paths, and I preferred the dark muddy path, and I went down that. And I've done that before in meditation. I've done it again in meditations, and gone out onto that open hillside that it led to. And this time, or the last time I did it, there were more people there. There was nobody there when I got there in the first experience, but since then, um, there's quite a crowd of us there. So
Uh, I like to think it's a welcoming crowd.
yeah, yeah. We're all there for the same reason, for the same, yeah, uh, for the same reason, for the same purpose. So it felt good
Yeah. And if it's not too intimate to share, what is that purpose?
to do this work. I believe, yeah. Um,
And this work being the work of engaging with expanded states of consciousness or altered states of consciousness in this way.
yeah, yeah. Or there may be other ways to do it through ZB, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our problems on this planet are consciousness related. And so if we want to change the world, we need altered states can be one way of doing that, I think, you know. Um,
I mean, we certainly live in a very caffeine driven society. Well, alcohol as well. You know, those seem to be like our go to methods of somehow altering or forcing particular states of mind.
mm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, is that how you view it? Or am I putting words in your mouth?
um, I'm not so much on caffeine these days.
Sure.
But I think um, I think people who use caffeine and alcohol are doing it from a different place. Um, I think ZB has the possibility, at least, of really beneficial altered states, and they come from a different part of us.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's that's kind of the difference between what the ego wants and what your heart wants. Um, That's the best way I can describe it. It's a
Yeah.
higher part of you, I think. Certainly, that's what that's what my clients say. Um,
And this higher part sounds or feels to me like it would lead one toward wholeness, toward healing, as opposed to, well, the opposite, really.
yeah, yeah. It's for the highest good or the betterment of the world, or however you want to see it. Um,
So, in a way, this vision gave you a vocation, a calling, or
yeah,
at
I
least a
think
clue
so. It
toward it.
certainly it encouraged me to. Uh, the first path I saw was very regimented and clear and a bit restrictive, and the other path was dark and muddy and undefined, but it was more attractive to me. So I followed that path, and I think that was like a metaphor um, for penetrating heaven, for following what I wanted to do, and using ZB as a vehicle for what I have to offer. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but you said earlier about the book took a few years to write, partly to gather the material and to gather the experience to talk about it, but also because I kept it quite secret in the
Mm.
early years, um, and I was feeling my way along that path. It wasn't like I knew where I was going, but I just knew I had to keep going, and luckily I got good, or my clients had good responses almost straight away, um, and that just encouraged me. Otherwise, I might have given up, or I might have looked somewhere else. But yeah, it's such a rich, fertile area to explore, and my confidence grew, and then the results, the feedback started coming in, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's good.
Okay. So, can you share some of these early experiences? I mean, I know in the book you go through, kind of what you did and what your approach was, and you use different sort of tools, if you will, to help you to get to a state where you could help the other person, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. At least that's my words for it. Um, but I'm wondering, what did people come with, and what was their sort of like initial responses? So people can get a feel for what it's about and how it might be able to help them.
Well, I started with experimental sessions on my friend Mike, and he was having these really interesting experiences. And at first, they were kind of like a bit of fun. They were interesting, fun, uh, exciting, and then I started offering it to more people, and eventually, I just knew there was something there, um, and so after I'd got my method, my fulcrum, as it were, I I explored the possibility that the um, the visions, or the feelings, the experiences that people had in the altered state had some value, some meaning that they could bring back to their life. So I started exploring with the possibility that the answers are within us,
Mm.
because I think anyone who's had ZB enough will have had the experience of bubble ups, insights, and ideas coming up to them, and or just remembering something that as the sort of dust settles in your psyche, your clarity can arise, and so I started exploring the premise that the answers are within us, and if you relax and get out of the way, then they can bubble up. And so when I framed the sessions around that, then people started reporting that they had their answers, they got answers to questions, and we needed to phrase the question a certain way, but not too defined, but just an invitation to get clarity on different areas of their life. And
Can you give us an example or two?
um, about relationships. There's an example in the book about um, a girl who's she thought that her relationship with her boyfriend was coming to an end, and she got some clarity on that, and she saw she had a memory or a visual memory of her on holiday with him, but she wanted to go and see one of the tourist attractions and he didn't, so she ended up going with someone else. And in the photos that were taken, they look like a couple, but they're not a couple. And then when she said that, she realized that we're not a proper couple. You know, they her and her boyfriend, they were on the point of splitting. So um, she was able to um, end that relationship with a bit more of a philosophical attitude, you know, like it was for the best. And so, yeah, very personal experiences.
Mm.
Um, Other people asked for advice about their career or, you know, their health. Later I started applying it to people's symptoms when they came to me, to ask for insights onto their more insights into their symptoms. So, and people, yeah, people found meaning in their symptoms, or they changed their relationship with their symptoms. So, yeah, got clarity on them. And then I think with a shift in perspective, you can have a shift in your experience of those symptoms. I mean, it doesn't mean the symptoms are going to clear up. They may or may not, but it's having a different perspective on them can change your situation.
Yeah, yeah. So, in a sense, once people got used to this, perhaps after one, maybe even two sessions, then they would see coming to you for zero balancing as a bit like meeting themselves or meeting their own inner guru or guide, so they could have that clarity. Oh, I've got this issue in my life. I could take that to a session, and then they
Yeah.
could have some meaning come from whatever it is they saw. Is it always visions that people have?
No, I think I think I expected people to have visual experiences
Mm,
uh, because I'd had one, and that was what I was trying to facilitate. But some people had just kinesthetic experiences; they felt something. Um, so no, not everybody, and people change. People would have a visual experience one session, and then they have a kinesthetic the next. So
okay.
uh, yeah, it's an experience, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
I think visual. Most people were visual,
Okay.
most people, but no, they'd they'd have an experience and usually get clarity, depending on how they framed it, and the frame was important. And as a sort of, as I said, I was like a freshly certified ZBer, and so I started really appreciating the frame a lot more and the pauses and the timing of things. So it was part of my learning as well. Even though
Mm,
I'm certified, I was still, as you know, you learn through doing it. You get up
yeah,
to a certain standard as a graduate, and you can give a good ZB, but you're still learning.
yeah,
So yeah, people had personal experiences. So yeah, I guess they're meeting themselves. Some describe it as meeting their higher self, but it depends on your worldview and your belief system. But yeah, some people met guides or um, family members who might have passed on, ancestors. Different cultures would have a different perspective on that. Um, but yeah, most people got something, and that was what kept me going. So,
so what was your success rate, if we can frame it that way?
well, uh, I don't know if it was just the people I was attracting,
Sure.
the clients I was attracting, but it was pretty high. The problem that the main problem was, I think, was people resisting.
Mm.
if there's a bit of fear around altered states.
Mm.
Um, but then, as I describe in the book, there's ways around that, and sometimes people would block it, um, and then they realize they can block it. That gives them more confidence. They're more in control, because it's not me that's in control. I'm facilitating, but I can't force the altered state on them. So once they realize that they're safe and they can stop it happening. So that, again, donkey connection is very important, feeling safe and trust. But yeah, after they got over that, normally within a session, most people, maybe not the first attempt, but the first run, but usually by the end of the session, they've got something. And then further sessions again, it seemed to get easier. And then my regular clients would just, I was thinking about this when you invited me for the interview. I tried to be really clear about my method in the book. And then the other day I was doing a session with a regular client, and she just goes at the slightest touch of these points now. And it's almost like, well, I didn't really do anything. So, I mean, she's, I do the ZB, the protocol, but I don't really get into the nitty gritty of my technique, because the regular clients just kind of, they don't need that so much.
Mm.
So it becomes easier for them and easier for me. So that was another thing. One client described it as forging a channel, and it's just easier to get to that place.
Yeah, that sounds like quite a good analogy, because I know from things like, any skill, the more we do it, the easier it is to get there, whether that's,
Yeah.
anything from running to rock climbing to meditating or whatever it may be. And I suppose in some sense, accessing different states of consciousness is a skill.
Yeah.
And we can train ourselves to become more familiar with, in essence, different parts of ourselves, different parts of what it is to be human. Yeah, okay. Just wondering which direction to take it now, because part of me is quite curious about the acupuncture side of
Mm.
things. So you settled on an acupuncture point, um, utilizing touch to stimulate or work on that point. And that acupuncture point is translated as penetrating heaven, which is where you derive the name for the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why that point?
Well, the quick answer is because I tried a range of different acupuncture points.
Yeah.
I made a short list of acupuncture points that I thought might help to facilitate altered states.
And what was the criteria for this shortlist?
Well, each point has a function or energetic quality, and some of them, each point has a Chinese name. Some of them have names with spirit or heaven in the name, which kind of suggests some sort of spiritual dimension to the point. And other points have a character for a door or a gate. So you could think, well, that maybe that's a portal to another realm, or
some sort of threshold.
Yeah. And yeah, I tried some points. There's a set of points called the windows of sky or windows of heaven, which some people believe have a spiritual connotation. And then gallbladder 9, Tian Chong, which is just above the ears on the parietal bone. It fulfilled some criteria, because a lot of acupuncture points are on soft tissue, but this one happens to be on bone, which I was favoring as a zero balancer. And it's also, some believe it to be one of the missing window of skies. So I started using it, and it just simply got the better results. as in more interesting, more clear vision, more longer lasting. Just the feedback was just better, and it just promised to be more. It held more promise. So, and it's quite easy to fit into the ZB protocol. It's quite easy to find. So yeah, it kind of won. It ticked all the boxes, and I wanted to focus it rather than jumping from point to point. I decided on that one because it just from the very first moment it just got the best results, and yeah, so that's the reason. So I've experimented with other points as well, but yeah, it just became my favorite. So I had personally for me, it had come to me when I lay down in the sun in the park, and I just suddenly remembered that point, and it just popped into my head. So it had a personal meaning for me, and I think part of it is, like I try to say in the book, it's partly about finding something that you like to do, so that you can get behind yourself more and you can really focus on it. If you don't like touching people's heads, you might have to try and find a different point. But I liked it. It seemed to fit. It was quite easy for me. So
Yeah,
it had meaning. As an acupuncturist, the point had a bit more meaning than perhaps to a non-acupuncturist. They wouldn't be sort of caught in the spell of all the philosophy.
yeah. So do all your zero balancing sessions now, are they all, in a sense, penetrating heaven sessions?
Not all of them, no. And normally I'd like to, if a new client comes for zero balancing, I usually just give them a pure zero balancing, and then I discuss the possibilities, or they've seen my website, or seen my book, so they kind of know what I do. But it's not like a rush to, unless they come specifically for penetrating heaven. But normally I introduce it gradually and have a chat with them first.
Yeah.
But I very rarely do it without explaining what I'm doing to them, because I don't know, it just feels, I've never had a client have a bad experience.
I mean, even just lying there for 5 minutes, even if nothing were happening as such, partway through a zero balancing session, could be a very pleasant experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, have you played with the idea of asking people or getting people to frame a standard zero balancing session, if you will, a more regular run-of-the-mill zero balancing session, with a question in the frame?
No, I haven't, but I've done that for myself as a receiver. I've gone into a session and maybe not vocalized it in the frame, but I've set my intention to get answers on things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure that's possible. You don't have to use my technique, but
did you find, I mean, in those instances, did you find yourself having, a vision, if you will?
I've had kind of just movie clips, of movies I've seen, and or just memories, or nothing as profound as my penetrating heaven clients describe, really, but just still useful. You might a song might pop into your head, or you might remember an old movie scene, and if you think about it, maybe that applies to your session, to your question. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason why you can't use just the protocol for doing this. But I think I learned a lot about framing and facilitating with just to help to facilitate the altered states, if that's what the client wants or if that's what the client needs. Not everyone does, but
Yeah.
some people just, they come for more physical reasons. So, yeah, but I don't think it hurts to have an altered state experience.
No, definitely not. Especially when they, lead you to such a wholesome place, or a
Yeah.
place that can, guide. And yeah, it sounds wonderful, really. I mean, it sounds, who doesn't have something going on in their lives that having a bit of clarity or guidance or um, even a sense of meaning or changing your relationship with it, I mean, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I was working in multidisciplinary clinics, so there was a whole menu of therapies that you could have, and you can have. Why should you have zero balancing when you can have shiatsu or massage? Or, well, we know the answer to that, but it was a hard sell as it just a body work. And so I started selling myself as more it's body work for the mind.
Yeah.
And the aspect that it can affect the psyche and affect your consciousness. And yeah, not that you can't have altered states from shiatsu or massage, you can, but there's something special about touching bone and the energy of bone. So yeah, that's what we can offer.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that phrase, body work for the mind.
Yeah.
That really stood out. I was reading your book. I was like, oh yeah. Why haven't I come across that before?
Yeah, well, it's a bit salesy, but I remember when I first contacted Fritz and told him what I was doing, and he said that he's always thought of ZB as more than a bodywork, and of course it affects the mind as well. But just to impress that on the public and
Yeah.
just raise that awareness,
Yeah. And I think you and I both know that there's no part of one's being that can't be touched by zero balancing. Can't be accessed, can't be worked with, can't be facilitated.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful part of the work. And it really sounds like you've gone in this like quite a single-minded direction of like, okay, I'm gonna explore this. Like this is what I'm
Yeah,
gonna
well,
do.
that's what my first journey, my experience, really really fired up in me, and propelled me, because like I said, it stayed with me, and um, that's what gave me the motivation to do this, because I wanted to offer that to my clients. And yeah, my way is just one way, but I'm sure there are other ways. So
Yeah.
But I think there's still, if you come up with your own method of doing it, I think there's still some good tips in the book on how to coordinate the session.
And do you feel, now that you've kind of come up with a protocol, if you will, for penetrating heaven, that zero balancers picking up your book are likely to have uh, greater levels of success because you've already kind of gone through that process of refining it?
I like to think so. Yeah, I mean, I was writing the book with the hope that a zero balancer could pick it up and be able to do it. And I've that it's one of the most pleasing things of since I published the book is having messages from zero balancers saying, and I tried it and it works, and their clients are having experiences.
Cool.
And that's ultimately what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
Um,
So what's the future for penetrating heaven?
well, I think I've finished developing it, hence the book. But maybe there's more to come. You know, I started off exploring other acupuncture points as well.
Mm.
Maybe there's more to come from those. Maybe there's another book. I mean, there was about 100 pages of outtakes when I finished editing. So yeah, I had some ideas
Yeah.
that I didn't include in the book. But yeah, we'll
Are you
see.
exploring those at the moment?
Um, yeah, more so in I'm gathering kind of source material to back up what I'm doing. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm
Too early to share.
sorry.
Too early to share.
Yeah, really. I mean, I sort of drop a few hints in the book about other acupuncture
You did,
points
yeah,
that,
yeah.
which can be useful to try. I mean, my other wish for the book was to encourage zero balancers to experiment as I have, and
Mm.
as long as you stick to the principles, you know, the ZB principles of interface and
Mm.
donkey and highest personal regard, you know, why not
Yeah.
explore and explore your ideas? Because looking back, you know, I don't think of myself as bold, but I must have been bold to to offer it like that. And like I said, it was gradual and
Yeah.
a slow, gradual process. But I was building in confidence as I went along. And I can understand how a zero balancer might not feel that they can just offer it, but
Mm.
try it on a few friends and see what happens.
And have you received Penetrating Heaven from another Zero Balancer?
No, not yet. I'm still
Oh,
waiting.
we got to fix that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who'd step up to the challenge. I know I would.
That would be amazing. Yeah, yeah. People ask me if I can do it on myself, and but I haven't managed. I could put some needles in there, but no, I haven't managed that.
That's brilliant. Well, yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Where can, for example, where can people find out more about you? Where can they get the book?
The book, you can buy the book on Amazon,
Mhm.
or you can contact me direct if you don't want to go through Amazon. My website's gethynwilliams.com, and I've got a page there for Penetrating Heaven. Well, good luck with your channel. I think it's a really good thing that you're doing.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite kind of nerve-wracking. It feels there's something about being out there. You know, I mean, like launching a website is a bit like publishing a brochure. Fair enough, it's a lot more involved, but um, like being recorded on video and somebody hearing you and kind of maybe getting a sense of who you are. I mean, this is my living room, you know. It's very strange. It's almost like inviting people to my house and broadcasting my house to other
Yeah,
people. But in some ways, that's metaphorical as well of like broadcasting zero balancing to the world because
sure.
a bit like you, I feel passionately about this work and um, yeah, for me, this is kind of it, for
Mm.
um, I don't know if that's how you feel about zero balancing, but certainly with penetrating heaven, I get this sense that, this real sense of a calling or a challenge almost to integrate and manifest that vision that you had.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it was one I couldn't ignore, and I'm glad. You know, my my fear of being seen
Mm.
and publishing the book and didn't know what people would think. That shrunk, and my fear of not publishing just got bigger. So
That was the tipping point.
yeah, yeah, and I just thought I can't not publish this. You know, even if I get shot down. Um, yeah, so yeah, that it was a tipping point for sure, and I'm sure you've gone through a similar experience with launching this channel. You know.
Yeah, it's still, to be honest, still early days. I haven't committed myself fully. I'm experimenting and I'm seeing if it will keep going. I'm
Yeah,
not putting any pressure on myself to publish a video a week or anything like that.
no,
It's
no.
just a case of let's see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's how Penetrating Heaven started.
yeah.
And I didn't know I was going to write a book, and I
Mm,
didn't know where it was leading, but I just kept
mm.
plowing ahead. So one step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that sense of that mystery of life actually kind of comes through in what you just said, and in that sense of, you have no idea where this is going. You're just kind of following the breadcrumbs or following that inner compass.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad um, that you're in the zero balancing community and that,
Thank you.
like I love reading books about zero balancing and they're all so different.
Yeah,
And um, yeah, I just think it's great that people are engaged with this work in this way. And um, just really pleased that you did it. And not just publish the book, obviously, but actually that you've gone through that whole process of exploring it, of experimenting with it, of and also of self-transformation, because there's this growing confidence, there's this growing skill that's kind of, behind the narrative of the book. And I love that. I really love that.
yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, definitely was a process. It was my story of my first few years as a zero balancer, my first 7 or 8 years, and I hope it gives confidence to fresh graduates, and because you can explore. You don't have to wait until you've got 10 or 20 years under your belt. Um, and I learned, yeah, I learned so much from experimenting and exploring these principles that Fritz laid down for us. So I'm glad I wrote it as well. And yeah, it was just, for me personally, it was about going public as well. Standing up and being seen was a big deal for me. Somebody asked me if I'm going to teach Penetrating Heaven, and I know that's, I mean, part of the reason that I wrote the book the way I did was hopefully that I wouldn't have to teach it, but I could just, put some ideas out there and people would. I mean, like I said, I've had a lot of lovely messages from people who've tried it, zero bouncers who've tried it,
Yeah,
and it works, and that's a real,
that's amazing.
yeah, yeah,
That's a real validation, isn't it? That's this kind of seal of approval. Like it's not just you who's got this
yeah,
special touch.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, it's a relief actually that
Yeah,
it's not me.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
principles. It's anyone, well, anyone with a decent touch. I think any zero balancer would be able to do it. It's confidence is a big thing, and
mm,
experience, but um, yeah, it's so good when I get a message from someone saying that they've tried it and their clients are having these wonderful experiences.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's really amazing.
I've had people come and say, I used to have a massage every month, but now I want to have zero balancing.
Yeah,
People do know the difference. If they experience it, then they know the difference.
yeah,
Um, and it's profound. Yeah, it is. It is special work. So,
yeah. Even a fairly mediocre ZB from somebody who's new to it can still hit spots,
oh yeah,
and you end up like going, oh, that's better.
yeah, definitely, yeah, yeah. That's why, when I was developing Penetrating Heaven, what part of what gave me confidence was I was thinking, well, at least they're getting a good ZB, you
Yeah,
know. There was a lot. I clung to ZB very closely, and put my trust in the ZB, and
yeah,
that's part of the success of it. Was that I believed in ZB, um, and I believed that the ZB was necessary. and of course it helps, but you don't need the full protocol. In the beginning, I was tacking it on the end of a ZB protocol, thinking I needed it, but um, eventually I wove it in to the protocol, and it's yeah, I came to a good place with it. So um, I think I'm done with developing it, but
Sure.
who
But
knows?
you're
Some
developing
people
other
like,
things
well, yeah. I'm still exploring. I'm still
now.
coming up with ideas. Um, Maybe one day you'll give me penetrated heaven, and my question will be, where do I go from here? What else can I do?
How's it going in Wales? Are you acupuncture and zero balancing mostly?
Yeah. Zero balancing's going down well. Some of my clients who are not therapists have bought my book,
Oh wow.
partly to find out what I do, but
After they've
sometimes,
been, having visions or whatever. They're like, what
yeah.
is
Well,
this stuff?
yeah. I thought I'd explained it uh, to one lady who came,
Yeah.
um, and it was about, and she bought my book after in her second session. She bought my book, and then but the fourth session she'd read it, and she said, "Oh, so that's what you've been doing." I think, oh, maybe I didn't explain it properly in the beginning, but yeah, it really does. People get it.
Yeah.
Um, and at first, I thought only zero balancers would get it, then only a certain type of people. But yeah, people get it. That they, especially um, experientially, they feel it.
Mm.
They might not understand the concepts, although yeah, I'm pleased to say, quite a few. I think it's about 10% of the sales I think so far have been non-zero balances, and
Oh,
that's quite pleasing.
is that based on feedback or?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, I don't. Amazon don't break that down for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've clients have asked, some acupuncturists who are not zero balancers
Okay.
have bought it,
Yeah.
um, and I know some people have bought it because they know me and maybe they're supporting me or whatever. They're interested in what I'm doing, but
Mm.
the feedback I get is that yeah, people kind of instinctively get it, and um, I think it's quite empowering to think that the answers are within us. People, I was surprised at how people, when I put that premise forward, nobody knocked it back, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I believe that." They
Yeah.
just went for it, and yeah,
I remember as a teenager, sometimes I would have a question in my mind, go to sleep, and then wake up and be like, "Oh, that's where I left that thing, but
yeah,
I forgot where
yeah,
I put it."
yeah,
And I think maybe that's a fairly universal human experience that we sometimes have some sort of message or some sort of clarity that comes up because of a good night's sleep.
yeah,
Um, and this strikes me as a way of accessing similar, but more intentionally, more on that sort of you know level of waking.
yeah, yeah,
Because the thing with dreams is that quite often you get up and move around, and before you know it, you've forgotten what you dreamt about.
yeah, exactly. Which kind of makes um, the zero balancing experience a bit different from dreams.
Definitely.
Because in the beginning, I used to do penetrating heaven, and I would ask the client to remember their dreams that night, thinking there might be a connection, and there wasn't. I didn't get any feedback.
Mm.
It's a different quality of. I think it's a different place that you go to.
Mm.
It's a different quality of consciousness. It's yeah.
I'd love to go to that place
Mm,
and, and join you on that hill.
yeah. Well, it was a good vision to see other people there as well.
Yeah,
Um, and I think more people are doing it, and it's the best way to get the work out there rather than just me doing it. To know that there are other zero balancers out there doing it, it's a great feeling.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. I can't quite imagine what that's like, but I mean, it sounds good.
yeah, yeah,
Very affirming.
yeah. I mean, it's. it's more exciting than selling a book now. In the beginning, I was following my Amazon sales and oh, I've sold another, but now it's more like, oh, I got more feedback. Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me and thinking of me. Yeah, it's been good. I look forward to a boost in the sales now.
Well, that's the end of the interview with Gethyn. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're a zero balancer and you haven't read the book, I recommend getting a copy. It's available on Amazon. And if you liked today's topic and are interested in different states of consciousness, make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I think you'll enjoy the next video. As always, links to more information about zero balancing can be found in the description below. So if you're curious about this therapy and want to give it a try, then my sincere wish is that you find a practitioner near you. Until the next time, bye for now.